All right, welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss Podcast. Today we are going to talk about the Sugar Bowl. It is finally game week. We're going to address some of the nerves about whether or not the game will happen, but we'll mainly just talk about the Sugar Bowl. In the second segment, we're going to talk about the things we are looking forward to seeing one last time in the Sugar Bowl. And in the third segment, we are going to talk about bowl game lines, minus the Auburn game. And where they're stacking up right now. So, thank you for tuning in today, and this is the Locked On Ole Miss Podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, this is the Locked On Ole Miss Podcast. Thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss Podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including soon-to-be YouTube. We're going to get a new YouTube channel. We will let you know where that is whenever that happens. But until then, we were going to broadcast on the Y'all's Conference Network YouTube page. It just is what it is. We're going to do video regardless, but we're waiting on the Locked On Ole Miss YouTube page. And as always, whenever we do this is about perspectives, and you can see the chat thing for the live popping up on the side of the screen. If you want to comment on that, comment on the live stream inside YouTube of the Y'all's Conference Network page. It'll appear there. I'll be able to interact with the show in ways that you want to, and it'll grow into something fun. So I'm expecting to have a little bit of fun with that. So. Today's show is brought to you by Sonos.com. Sonos is the official sponsor of ESPN College Football. Go to Sonos.com for more information. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about the Sugar Bowl and, everything. Now, I want to say this before we get started and everything, because this is all about the Sugar Bowl and everybody's worried about if the game will actually be played because of what is happening. And there are teams that are canceling because of COVID. Hey, Trent, how you doing? There are people canceling because of COVID, and I can understand people canceling because of COVID. I get that. There's no pushback whatsoever about canceling because of COVID. But you also see these people putting them out, which means they're being told to media members as the reason they are pulling out of these bowl games, as opt-outs and transfer portal as another reason for pulling out of the bowl game. Opt-outs and transfer portal in no universe is an acceptable excuse for canceling a bowl game. It just isn't. At best, it's a reason for you to decline the invite to start with. But nobody's going to decline that invite because of so much money. I have not heard how many players tested positive. I heard a rumor that it was 8-ish, somewhere in there, Trent. But they're going down a day earlier, which means the situation is probably improved. And I think everything's in good shape for the Sugar Bowl to be played. But, Texas A&M didn't have their starting quarterback. Zach Calzada entered the transfer portal. They were going to lose to Wake Forest. You were going to have an 8-5 Texas A&M team with a $100 million coach. You don't want that fifth loss. So that makes you really wonder, is COVID the reason the game was canceled? Or did they just not want to play in the game to start with? That is my opinion of that. Is if you don't have a quarterback, LSU's playing. LSU's going. LSU has every reason in the world to use COVID as an excuse not to play. They're planning on playing. They're planning on going. They're not afraid of taking the L. And it's all about competing. Because there's over 100 players on that roster. There's over 100 players on that roster. And because of that, they get 12 players, 13 players have COVID, and all of a sudden the room is dropped down enough to where they can't play. What about the other 90 players? What about the other 80 players? Let them go. You might take the L. You might take the L. It might happen. But go find out. You might actually go over there and find something you didn't know you had, because there are players that weren't able to get on the field before that didn't practice particularly well, that were absolutely gamers. You could get in that bowl game and find something you didn't expect to find. But now you won't if you're not playing. Opt-outs and transfer portal in no way are excuses. In no way are excuses for canceling a bowl game. COVID's the only reason, and if so, you better have an outbreak of 50 players. Anything less than that kind of reeks of being scared of the L. And Texas A&M has the situation. Like I said, Jimbo Fisher could be a $100 million coach with 5 losses this season in a year where they were expected to compete for the West. They finished, next to last in the West? They lost to both Mississippi schools and lost 4 games because they didn't play Wake Forest. Anyway, but, yeah, I went off on a tangent there. I apologize for that. But the Sugar Bowl is coming up, and there was a little bit of worry about COVID being an excuse for the Sugar Bowl. I think the Sugar Bowl is going to get played. I don't see a bunch of things. And not only that, the transfer portal with Ole Miss, there's players that are in the portal that are going to play in the game. Just because they're in the portal doesn't necessarily mean you lose that player until the end of the year. That's your choice. So, but the Sugar Bowl is coming on. Ole Miss, I think, is going down on the 29th instead of the 30th, which is an indication that the situation has improved a little bit. They have Baylor lined up. I have not seen the uniforms for Baylor. You have the white, powder white Ole Miss is going to wear, and I'm curious to see what Baylor is going to do, because there's a chance that Baylor could just white it out, which would look fantastic. Or they could go all yellow, which would look atrocious. And I'm not 100% sure how that's going to go at this point. And so I don't really want to, put myself out there a little bit with the uniform of the day. And it just turns out to be one of those things. You try and you try and you try. All green. Now, all green could look pretty good. I'm interested in all green. Trent Nassip said he saw that Baylor was all green, but he could be wrong. It's true. They're going to be monochromatic. That's one thing you know about Baylor. They have those 3 colors, and they always wear monochromatic uniforms. They're either all white, all yellow, or all green. So I expect to see something like that. They were all yellow against Oklahoma State in the Big 12 championship, a game in which they won. So I'm looking forward to that game and the aesthetic game that happened surrounding it. And it should look really good. It's a game where most everybody is expecting it to be a close game. I think Ole Miss is a 1-point favorite right now. Opened at 2. But it's a game that's not moving really hard one way or another. Some bowl games are moving really hard one way or another. We're going to get on lines in the last segment of the show. But because of that, it's not moving. It kind of makes you wonder what's going on. Because looking at this, this is a good matchup for Ole Miss. If Ole Miss can stop the run enough to rush the passer, Ole Miss has a chance to do something that is, pretty great, because Ole Miss can be second after the Sugar Bowl. They can be second all time in wins in the Sugar Bowl. They're 4th in appearances, but they'll be second in wins. That'd be 7-3, their record in the Sugar Bowl. And that's really fantastic, because there'll be one game behind Alabama. I think Alabama's 8-7. They've been 15 times. Ole Miss has a chance to go 7-3. That'd be 10 times. So in just 10 appearances as opposed to 15, Ole Miss could be one game behind in wins in the Sugar Bowl. Now, part of that is how much and how important they place that game. How important they place that game. And they really get up for a Sugar Bowl at Ole Miss. We saw that against Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State just really wasn't ready for what was about to hit them. I think Baylor might be about to see about the same thing. But it's a game that Ole Miss people really get up for. Now, part of that was the gap between the Sugar Bowl in 1970 and the 45 years to 2015 or 2016, January 1st, 2016. Part of it is that. Now, what will it look like this time when they were just there 6 years ago? I mean, this is a program that is, since the mid-90s, since the hiring of Tommy Tuberville, this is a team that has slowly grown and built and built and built. To 2003, the Cotton Bowl, Eli getting there. To 2008 and 2009 Cotton Bowls. To the Sugar Bowl in 2015. To the Sugar Bowl in 2021. What is it going to look like by 2027? Is that the breakthrough for the playoff? Will Arch Manning go to Ole Miss and take them to another level, which is absolutely a possibility. And it'll be interesting to see what the Sugar Bowl can lead to and how it goes. Because in 2015, it was a surprise. It was amazing. It was a year, Ole Miss lost to Memphis, and they lost to Florida that year. Who else did they lose to? They lost to somebody else, I believe, as well. But, to get the Sugar Bowl, to actually just back into the Sugar Bowl. This year, there was a no-brainer. Ole Miss was obviously third. Ole Miss deserved to be here. In 2015, they kind of backed into the game. They dropped a couple games they weren't supposed to lose. This year, they only lost to Auburn and Alabama. Now, they probably shouldn't have lost to Auburn, but Matt Corral got hurt, got carted off. Luke Altmaier did a fantastic job. Anybody that is doubting Luke Altmaier going into this season in 2022 did not watch him come in that season, the poise that youngster had. I am all about Luke Altmaier moving in the future. Also, I think Ole Miss needs a transfer quarterback just for competition's sake, so it's not Luke Altmaier's job. I'm scared to death of a Michael Spurlock 2004 type situation. That's the reason competition is needed in that room. But you don't need to bring in a starter because Luke Altmaier can be a starter. He's good enough to do that. He's shown that. And that Auburn game was proof of that. But the Sugar Bowl is just a transcendent moment in Ole Miss football history. It always is. And this will be the 10th one. This will be the second of my lifetime. The game against Oklahoma State, I wanted to go, but I didn't go. And I'm not going to go on this one either because we're going to do this Locked On thing. And I'm thinking about doing a bonus podcast after the game, by the way, just to let you know, just a little reaction show, a little 15-minute, no commercials. Hey, this is what's going on. That's what I'm thinking about doing after the game. But that'll be like midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. And basically, I want all my thoughts to be fresh of the game and what's going on. But I'm absolutely looking forward to it. We're going to take we're going to hear from our sponsors and do all that. But before I want to go, I do want to let you know, this podcast is going to be about commentary and perspectives. It's not going to be about news. News, as we can see, that there's a problem with it at the moment. If I am 100% against everything that is reported, just blanket. I don't have to have anything. Just blanket reporting. I will be right 90% of the time. That's the mistake, and that is what's wrong with what's being reported now. So we are going to be about perspectives, and we're going to be about commentary, but we're not going to necessarily be about news. If you need news, you're going to need to get it somewhere else. I recommend Talking Champions. Great podcast. It's probably the best news podcast out there for Ole Miss sports. But I recommend that. They have Zach Berry for recruiting, all of that stuff. You can scratch all that itch. We're going to get into it from time to time because if there's something that needs to be talked about, we're going to talk about it. But until then, we're not going to play the rumor game. We're not going to play the telephone game. We're not going to do anything like that. So when we come back, we are going to talk a little bit about what we're looking for in the Sugar Bowl. So stick around. Yes, have you heard about Built Bar? That's Built Bar. Basically, it's a tasty treat that tastes like a candy bar, even better than a candy bar. It's a Built Bar. It's built with so much holiday goodness, rich and decadent flavor, covered in chocolate, but amazingly low in calories, sugar, and net carbs, along with fat. It's also high in protein. You get the best of both worlds, delicious and healthy. So many flavors, you'll have a hard time choosing. Will you have raspberry or mint brownie or cherry or double chocolate? So many different things are available for you. You friends with Santa? Tell Santa to throw a few Built Bars into those stockings with so many flavors they'd make anybody's Christmas morning a happy one. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off of your order. Again, go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. That's Built.com. All right, welcome back to the show, Locked On Ole Miss Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Willis. Thank you very much for tuning in. What I want to talk about this segment is what I'm looking for in particular this game. What is making me excited about this Sugar Bowl? And we're going to talk about the Sugar Bowl all week because the Sugar Bowl deserves to be talked about all week. We're going to get into a little bit what's going on, and then after the game, we'll kind of get into basketball. But what I'm looking forward to in this game is what we're going to talk about. Before we get started, thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss Podcast your first listen every day. Make sure to check out the Ultimate College Football Preview 2021, local experts, betting advice, and draft analysis. The most comprehensive college football playoff preview is available now. So tune in for that. So, all right, we're going to talk about the things that I am looking forward to. And the thing that I'm honestly most looking forward to is the reveal of these uniforms. I want to see that white helmet. I want to see it in the wild on the players. I want to see what that looks like. I want to see what that powder blue on the helmet looks like with the jersey. I want to see what the white pants look like. Will it be the normal white pants or will they do the stripe as well? I don't know. They could bring the stripe in and do that as well, but we'll see exactly what it looks like. I think it's probably going to be straight white just because the white can be worn with the red and the navy blue jerseys as well. So it's a little bit more inexpensive. But I want to see what these uniforms look like because they're really good. And I want to see the contrast between the Ole Miss uniforms and what Baylor is wearing as well. Now, also, I want to watch this game for the styles of offense. And one thing that you'll notice when you watch this game is Baylor is very much like LSU 2013. They could have Jordan Jefferson or I think that's his name. Their wide receiver from Minnesota's brother played quarterback back in the day. Playing quarterback at LSU, they're ground and pound the ball. They're going to run the ball like crazy. They have an extremely physical running back. They really look like those old Les Miles teams. And Ole Miss is literally from that same era what Baylor was doing. So what you have is an SEC team that has the identity of a Big 12 team from the early teens, and Baylor taking on the SEC identity from that same time period. You have Gary Bohannon. I still don't know how to pronounce his name. I apologize for that. Playing very well. You're going to see some quarterback runs, but it's going to be different style quarterback runs. You could see some legit quarterback sneaks or sweeps called with Gary Bohannon. They like to do that to get the extra blocker. And he's a physical guy. He's about 230 pounds. He plays the position really well. But if you look at scores of the Baylor games, you have a Baylor team that wins 21-17, 24-14. That's the area that they want to really thrive in. It doesn't look like I expect them to make a big run if it gets into the 30s. Now, this is honestly a game where Ole Miss's defense needs to stop the run enough to be able to get after the passer. That is the key to this game, just like it was for A&M. Stop the run enough to get after the passer. The difference between this and A&M, though, is that Calzado was a little bit of a statue back there. And Gary Bohannon, I think that's just what I'm going to go, Gary Bohannon, is a mobile quarterback, and he will run the ball. I think he has a 100-yard rushing game this season. But it's different type rushes. You have a situation with a quarterback literally running a quarterback sneak with Abram lead blocking and both of that old wishbone type plays set out of that offense. So it's interesting the way it's going to look. It's the way it's set up. It's absolutely going to be interesting. All right. We are going to take another short break. When we come back, we are going to do the betting lines for bowl week. Stick around. All right, BetOnline has you covered all season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football continues its march to the playoffs. BetOnline remains your number one spot for sports action all this season. Head to our new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From basketball, football, NHL, boxing, and UFC to your favorite Vegas casino games, don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for 2021. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, it's bowl week, and we got the lines out there for the major games. The only one we don't have, I don't think we had the Birmingham Bowl in there, but I only had 10 spaces, and I think there was 11 games. And if you beat the SEC in the week before bowl week, those games, honestly, I don't care if they count, because if an SEC team plays in those games, they're not very good. So it would be kind of the equivalent of beating the 9th rated team in your conference. So you're 1, you're number 2 if you're a G5 team. It would be like UCF beating Rice, a game against Florida, especially because, honestly, Florida didn't want to be there at all. But good for UCF. It's the first win over Florida by an in-state school not named Florida State or Miami. I know that's a weird stat. Since 1938. So anyway, the Liberty Bowl. Mississippi State opened at an 8.5 point favorite. They're currently favored by 9.5. This is a game that, honestly, I would take Mississippi State by 20 points if it was available. Texas Tech still hasn't paid the buyout for Mike Leach. This is a game where Mike Leach is going to want to turn the knife. If it's closer than it needs to be, it's going to be a real problem moving forward, because there's no lack of want to from Mike Leach and his staff. The Duke's Mayo Bowl, North Carolina is currently favored by 9. It opened by 5.5. South Carolina is not a very good team. They're going to be a little bit better next year. And North Carolina was supposed to be a really good team that underachieved. Now, is this going to be two ships passing in the night? Who knows? But I expect Sam Howell to play fairly well in this game. The Music City Bowl opened with Purdue favored by 2. Now Tennessee's favored by 5. I told you all year that Tennessee's going to go into a bowl game and just absolutely blast somebody. Purdue looks like it's going to be that team. And because of that, I'd take the Volunteers in this game, especially in Nashville. It's a 3-hour ride from Neyland. Yeah. If you look at the Cotton Bowl, Alabama's favored by 13.5. It opened at 13 over Cincinnati. Alabama should handle Cincinnati. They got the players to handle Cincinnati. But as I've said over and over this season, Alabama goes as Bryce Young goes. Bryce Young has a bad game, Cincinnati's in it, because for whatever reason, the system that they brought in with Bill O'Brien does not match the one that was left by Steve Sarkisian. So there's a little bit of a personnel problem at Alabama. Now, like we said, 5 stars and those type players, they can bounce from system to system easier than a 3-star. But there is going to be a little bit of a drop-off from time to time. And Bryce Young is uber important to this team because there's a drop-off. There will also be no John Mechie in this game. But Jameson Williams is still there. And with those corners at Cincy, they could cause a little bit of a problem. Do not be surprised if this game is closer than it appears. Georgia is a 7.5-point favorite over Michigan. This should be a ground-and-pound game. Actually, Michigan kind of plays into Georgia's hand a little bit with what they do offensively. It's a game that I expect Georgia to go. JT Daniels has COVID. So this is going to be a Stetson Bennett thing. I think that Kirby would screw this up if there was a choice. Maybe not being a choice is the best situation for everybody. If you look at the Outback Bowl, Penn State opened -4. It's now a pick'em against the Hogs. KJ Jefferson and the boys going to come out there, run fast. Kendall Briles. We saw last year what the Outback Bowl can do. I kind of like the Hogs in this game. Citrus Bowl started with Iowa, favored by 2. It's now Kentucky by 3. Kentucky's in a little bit of a emergence happening in their program. It should be interesting to see what's going on. I think Levis and the boys will be a nice little tool against the Hawkeyes. Ole Miss is a 1-point favorite. It opened as a 2-point favorite. This is a game that I think Ole Miss matches up fairly well against the Baylor Bears. We'll have to see how it plays out in real time, but I kind of like Ole Miss on that one. And besides, though, if Ole Miss is only favored by 1, take the money line if you're going to bet on Ole Miss, because 1 point isn't enough to really flip anything. And the Texas Bowl opened with LSU 2.5. Then everybody realized that LSU has to play a walk-on quarterback, and it went to Kansas State 3.5. So it's one of those games. This is LSU's going to take the L. Everybody's going to talk about the SEC being overrated, and it's going to be because they don't have all the players. They're playing. Texas A&M is not, and that is important to realize. All right. All right, let's thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day. Tomorrow we are going to talk more about the Sugar Bowl. We're going to talk about the Sugar Bowl all week. We're going to be over it. Also, evangelize what's going on. The chat's open. As you can see, we're doing live again. Get those guys in the chat and get going and participate in the show. Thank you very much today, Trent in the SIP. And now make your second listen Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q, with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. It's free and available on all platforms. It's game week, everybody. Tonight on the Y'all's Conference Network, Beast of the East is coming back Wednesday. SEC After Dark is coming back. It's going to start to normalize now that the holidays are over. I'm through with my radiation and all of that stuff. I want to thank everybody for listening today. Tune in tomorrow, and I expect this to be fun over the next couple of weeks. Remember, commentary and perspectives. That's the goal of this podcast. So, thank you, and of course, hotty toddy.